Hi, I'm Stan Lee, publisher of Marvel Comics. For 25 years, Marvel has been recognized by readers worldwide as the home of the greatest costume heroes of all time. Today, such Marvel superheroes as Spider-Man, Captain America, and the Fantastic Four are virtually synonymous with comic book action, adventure, and excitement. And now, the best-selling comics characters on Earth spring to life in full-color animation in the grandest children's home video collection ever, Prism Entertainment's Marvel Comics Video Library, premiering on September 17th, debuting with 18 hour-long video cassettes featuring 18 different Marvel heroes and villains. The Marvel Comics Video Library will emphasize low price, terrific value for money, and the most complete product continuity of any children's video line on the market. Millions of Marvel fans, kids and young adults alike, who have grown up with our heroes for over a quarter of a century, will want to buy and collect the entire library. No other children's video offers you the most popular comic book characters from the top-selling comic book publisher in America, and no other home video line is packaged and priced to sell. Just consider these facts.
Free him with one single blow. No strike.
There are 15 million Marvel readers.
Spider-Man's secret identity? I'm interested. And I think it's time to exit. No!
Reaches 76% of children ages 6 to 17.
Look! There he is! There's that miserable wall crawler! Get him!
There are 100 million comic strip readers weekly.
He has escaped too many traps in the past. How well I remember our last encounter. During the
Marvel's share of the entire comic book market is 65%.
Just my luck, these babies like spiders!
The Marvel reader buys 10 comic books monthly.
Mr. President, in less than 10 minutes, a massive earthquake...
Marvel Video Library delivers high profits and big volume.
Trembling tarantulas, that's it. Now I know just how to get to the bottom of this evil scheme.
12 new hour-long double features every 90 days, and at a retail price of only $19.95. Others say when they're gone, they're gone. This is Stan Lee saying when they're gone, there's more.
Welcome, one and all, to yet another episode of Escape from Walt Disney, the podcast where we review movies, TV shows, and short films available on the Disney Plus streaming service, chosen completely at random. I am your host, Tony Goldmark. Joining us today via Zoom, all the way from Anaheim, California, David Ganssle.
It's still me.
All the way from Rochester, New York, Tim Crist.
It is I also.
And joining us for the very first time on Escape from Walt Disney at long last, all the way from Studio City, California. I kinda can't believe it took us this long to get around to having this guy on the show. You know him from his many, many appearances in my videos, stretching all the way back to Some Jerk with a Camera Season 1 a whole ass decade ago. You know him from his old review series, What We Had to Watch, but most of all, you know him as Comic-Con busker and YouTube parody rock god Il Neige, and his objectively way too many songs about Pokemon. Ladies and gentlemen, Garrett Snook!
I'd like to argue that there's no such thing as too many songs about Pokemon.
Fair enough. But we are covering a different Saturday morning program on this week's episode of Escape from Walt Disney. We are covering the 1981 Spider-Man series, specifically episode 18, The Capture of Captain America. Now, obviously, we're all very familiar with Spider-Man in general, but is anyone in this call specifically familiar with this 1981 series?
I believe that I'm familiar with the 1981 Spider-Man series.
Tim, I believe you're the only one of us old enough to have actually watched this when it originally aired.
I am indeed quite elderly, yes.
This is not the original 1967 series,
right,
which I don't believe is on Disney Plus for whatever reason. This one apparently only lasted one season. It was in syndication. It was not on one specific network, and it ran from September 12th, 1981 to March 30th, 1982. This was a period when there was pretty slim pickings for superhero media outside of the comics. The only superhero movies really happening at the time were the Christopher Reeve Superman movies. I think Superman 2 came out a year earlier. And on TV, there was the live-action Incredible Hulk series and a few things on Saturday morning, like Super Friends, I think, was running at the time, and this Spider-Man show, and that was pretty much it. And by the standards of the 2020s, one superhero movie franchise and a handful of superhero TV shows is practically nothing.
If you want Marvel shirts, you had to go to comic stores, and only some comic stores actually had shirts.
I thought you said shorts for a second.
I was thinking shorts, but no.
Yo, can I get like some Spanx with like a web pattern on them?
My understanding is that despite this being a low point for Marvel, at this time there were 2 concurrent unrelated Spider-Man series going on.
Were there? Okay.
Early on in getting Disney Plus, we checked out random episodes of the random Spider-Man shows just to see if we could find the 1967 one with the great theme song.
Right.
And the fantastic memes.
Yes.
And unfortunately that was not on Disney Plus. But there were like 2 80s Spider-Man cartoons.
You're right. The other one was Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends.
Yes.
And that ran from 1981 to 1983. The first season of that was going on at the same time as this show. And that aired specifically on NBC.
Yeah.
That's not the only time that's happened then. In the early 2010s, there was also Spectacular Spider-Man and Ultimate Spider-Man running roughly at the same time.
And this also long predates the Sonic the Hedgehog Sad AM versus Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog thing.
Versus Sonic Underground, all starring Jaleel White.
We obviously all just lived through the 2010s when we had 2 fucking Quicksilvers at the same time. So, you know, just all the fucking rights issues with Sony and Marvel and all that shit. I mean, we're on our 3rd cinematic Spider-Man, 4th or 9th if you count Spider-Verse.
Oh, God.
And it looks like they're all going to be coming to Disney Plus pretty soon with this new Sony deal. But Disney Plus already has no fewer than 3 Spider-Man series that are simply called Spider-Man.
Right.
There's this one from 1981, there's the one from 94 produced for Fox Kids, and the one from 2017 produced for Disney XD. And yeah, Disney Plus has both the 81 series simply called Spider-Man and Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends that ran concurrently, but not the 67 show, at least not yet.
There's one where he has adequate friends, oddly enough.
Yes. And pretty much all that stuff is completely new to me because I'm a huge mega fan of the MCU, and I know almost nothing about Marvel outside of the MCU. I'm that basic bitch. I've almost never read any of the comics. I haven't seen too many of the animated TV series, but I just love the fuck out of the MCU.
I'm the other end of that, I think. I started collecting Spider-Man comics with annual number 21, where I got married, and I stopped collecting at the exact moment that they eliminated all of Spider-Man's history back to that exact issue.
Oh, God.
Which I've always taken as kind of personal.
Oh, is this the One More Day incident?
Yes, it is.
Like I said, I don't read the comics, but One More Day was so notoriously hated that even I've heard of it.
Now, One More Day was caused by that character that everybody was certain was going to show up in WandaVision, right?
Right, yes. Let's read off the description on Disney Plus here. Captain America is kidnapped by Red Skull. Spider-Man tries to save him. Tries, not succeeds necessarily.
Well, they can't give away the ending.
No, of course not.
But is Red Skull going to sound exactly like Jordan Peterson is the question.
Oh, God.
I believe the Red Skull is going to sound like Optimus Prime, actually.
Oh, is it
Yeah.
Cullen?
Is it Peter Cullen?
Yeah, it is Peter Cullen.
Nice.
That throws both my preconceptions of what the voice is going to be in the trash.
He's Peter Cullen in the first movie, and then when they try to bring him back 10 years later, they get some guy from Walking Dead. And apparently George DiCenzo voices Captain America in this episode. I don't know who that is.
I'm guessing he's either going to be, hello, I'm Captain America, or that'll be like the old Batman and Robin cartoon where his voice is oddly subdued, like, ah, yes, Spider-Man, hello, I am Captain America.
I think George DiCenzo is just your grandmother trying to remember the name of George Costanza.
I just looked him up. George DiCenzo actually played Lorraine's dad in Back to the Future.
Hell yeah.
Oh, okay.
Who the hell is John F. Kennedy?
The guy who didn't know who John F. Kennedy was is playing Captain America. Brilliant.
Party was born to play.
Captain America will once again be peripheral to a time heist.
Peripheral to a Time Heist is my favorite Talking Heads album.
So this will be a nice relic from a bygone era, I suppose. And also a bygone depiction of Captain America. We got one with Cap and Spidey, so I wonder if they'll compare New York boroughs.
I'm a little disturbed that Cap's cowl is molded to his ears based on this art I'm looking at.
Oh my god, you're right.
I told you I thought I remembered this. When I first saw Spider-Man in 1981, I thought we were talking about the live-action Spider-Man, but that was a few years before that. That I'd actually seen a little bit of.
I think Nicholas Hammond was Spider-Man in live action.
Nicholas Hammond, that's right.
I don't know if I've seen this one or not. I mean, I saw a lot of the 1967 one because I grew up very close to the border of Canada. We did not have cable. Our antenna on the roof would freeze in one position during the winter, so we could only get whatever we could get in that position. We got a lot of Canadian television, and there was a Canadian station that had the 67 Spider-Man in syndication every morning. So anytime I was sick, I got to watch Spider-Man and the Muppets.
Nice.
But this one, I don't know if I've actually seen this. I definitely recognize the whole Spider-Man standing on a giant mountain that says Spider-Man.
Based on the one episode I did see from this series when we were flipping around random Spider-Man shows, it still looks like it could have been made in 1967.
And the only thing I'm noticing about this at this series' Wikipedia page is that this episode we got, episode 18, The Capture of Captain America, is the only episode with its own Wikipedia page.
Ooh.
Oh, wow.
It's not very long. It basically just gives the plot, and that's it. I'm not sure why the Wikipedia gods decided this deserved its own page.
I'm looking at the episode list now. The one right before this is the Canon of Doom, and canon is spelled with one N, so I'm just imagining
Oh, man.
it's Dr. Doom sitting Spider-Man down, and they're arguing over what actually is still part of the Star Wars universe and what has been resigned to the legends.
The retcon of Doom.
In the description of Canon of Doom, it spells canon with 2 N's, or 3 N's, rather. So I'm guessing the title is misspelled, and it's just someone at Disney Plus being a prankster.
I guess.
Because all of this is a Canon of Doom, let's be honest. It's all just alternate timelines and convoluted bullshit. Who cares?
I'm going to add an extra end to the Wikipedia page just to balance it out right now.
We will be right back with our thoughts on Spider-Man, parentheses, 1981, close parentheses, Episode 18, The Capture of Captain America, right here on Escape from Walt Disney.
Come on home. See what's waiting for you. Waiting for you.
Okay, we just watched Spider-Man, parentheses, 1981 series, close parentheses, episode 18, The Capture of Captain America. That was dumb as dog shit, and I kind of loved it.
Yeah. Hey, it delivered everything it promised. Captain America was captured, and Spider-Man did, in fact, try to save him.
Yes.
When I was a kid in the late 80s and early 90s, I feel like that was right around the time when there was a massive upgrade in the quality of most Saturday morning cartoons, both due to enhances in technology and also creative people like Tad Stones and Tom Ruger and Bruce Timm, who just really wanted these shows to be better, wanted to up the game of Saturday morning TV. So this was a fascinating glimpse at the before times that I largely missed when the people making these shows just did not give a shit. This was bad, but it was kind of delightfully bad.
It is a very, late stage Hanna-Barbera sort of TV animation.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily blame it for how it looks, because they had the technology they had at the time to make shows like this. They didn't have computers yet, so obviously it was going to look a little shaky, and they didn't preserve the film elements because no one foresaw that streaming services would be a thing 40 years in the future. So obviously the print of this was taken off of VHS tape, so the quality's not going to be great. So I don't necessarily disparage it for how it looks, although some of the designs were a little questionable, but we'll get to that. But the script, they just didn't give a shit. They knocked the script out in an hour.
I tried to do research on this series, and there's just not a lot of information out there about it.
Well, we mentioned the other show running concurrently, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, in which, incidentally, Spider-Man's other 2 friends were Iceman and Firestar. And they called themselves the Spider Friends. So this was back when Marvel was trying to rip off DC instead of the other way around, I guess.
Naturally.
There were 3 Spider-Mans on TV at that point, actually. It occurs to me that at the same time, Electric Company was also running reruns constantly.
That's
that was
right, Electric Company.
Spider-Man, where are you coming from, Spider-Man? Nobody knows who you are.
Where are you going to, Spider-Man? Nobody knows who you are. And then that song became Dog Police, as we all know.
Yes! Fucking Dog Police!
Dog Police, where are you coming from, Dog Police? Nobody knows who you are.
It took us 47 episodes, but we did it. We finally referenced Dog Police. Add that to the letterbox list, Diego. And speaking of theme music, so everyone still remembers the 60s theme song. Like in the Tom Holland movies today, Michael Giacchino works da-da-da, da-da-da into the scores because it's still just that memorable. I could not hum the theme to this series if you put a gun to my head.
I could.
Oh, you could?
I noticed during that every single cartoon Spider-Man, even if it's a full-on instrumental thing, it always scans to the word Spider-Man for some reason. Like, Spider-Man!
Right,
or
right.
yes, it's motherfucking Spider-Man!
Hooray for Spider-Man.
Silly ballyhooey Spider-Man.
Still, this theme music wasn't very memorable. I've never heard the Ramones cover this theme music. That's all I'm going to say.
No.
There were certainly memorable visuals in the opening credits.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
Like Spider-Man shrunken and being bullied by a cat.
Yeah,
Right.
Clearly just clips from the other episodes. Spider-Man gets shrunk, so he's just Ant-Man now, I guess.
Honey, I shrunk the Spidey.
And Dr. Doom was in this show as well, apparently.
Dr. Doom was in the credits a lot.
Yeah. That's what's so amazing. Every other Marvel multimedia property before the MCU was like, yeah, throw Dr. Doom in there. He's the friggin' best. Put Dr. Doom. He's the coolest Marvel villain.
Just willy-nilly.
They've had to make how many movies without Dr. Doom?
Yeah.
I mean, they could now, I guess, because Disney owns Fox.
Yeah, Phase 4, I'm sure that'll be the thing.
Phase 4 is going to be fantastic.
Hey, Fan-4-Stick.
I also loved the shot in the opening credits where it zooms in on a close-up of Peter Parker with a really doofy smile, and then Ripple dissolves to Peter Parker with that same exact smile pulling the mask over his face.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, speaking of dissolves on his face, I'm not sure if this was how they did it in the whole series or if it was just in this episode, but Peter's spider sense is visually represented by his face kind of half turning into a Spider-Man mask.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that
like
was
this mask
weird.
superimposes, and then you get some inner monologue, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Must have been, otherwise he was saying right next to Betty, wow, my spider
Except
sense
his
sure
mouth
is
was
acting
moving. So he was saying out loud, uh-oh, kids, in case you don't pick up on this visual cue, my spider sense is bothering me.
You say something, Peter? Oh, I said my hemorrhoids are bothering me.
Getting back to Amazing Friends, according to Wikipedia, Amazing Friends wasn't just concurrent to this show, it was a crossover with this show. So the two shows were meant to take place in the same universe, like fucking Buffy and Angel or something.
Oh.
But in Amazing Friends, Spider-Man had a different voice actor. Here it was Ted Schwartz, and in Amazing Friends, it was Dan Gilvezan.
And in the 90s, all three shows were redubbed with Jaleel White?
But apparently, despite a mostly different cast between the two shows, in Amazing Friends, Peter Cullen did come back as Red Skull.
So the episode begins, Captain America's coming to town, and J. Jonah Jameson has authorized this Captain America Day, because apparently newspaper editors can just declare days.
His son is an astronaut, so...
Jameson is just this huge Captain America fanboy.
Which, by the way, somewhere in the queue for the Spider-Man ride at Islands of Adventure, in the Daily Bugle queue, there is a picture on a desk of Jameson shaking Cap's hand.
Well, there you go.
Cap isn't a masked menace like that Spider-Man weirdo. He's a real American hero. Maybe the greatest hero this nation has had since Herbert Hoover.
Herbert Hoover, who historians widely agree is one of the worst presidents we've ever had, who exacerbated the Great Depression and possibly even caused it. So I guess that was this show's attempt at a political joke. And then Jameson makes his staff watch a Legend of Captain America propaganda film full of exposition they already know.
But, Mr. Jameson, we all know how great Captain America is.
Don't they have a newspaper to publish? Don't they have work to do?
The propaganda newsreel is presented by Democracy Pictures.
Democracy Pictures, yes. Which sounds like a logo at the beginning of a short film that MST3K would riff.
Once Cap got out of the ice, they must have said, okay, now we're gonna need you to recreate the part where you got put on ice, Cap. I hope you don't mind.
We got this underwater camera, so can you reenact the most traumatic thing that ever happened to you?
You fall into the water and land in the one rectangular cube of ice in otherwise liquid water.
Also, not a single single mention of Bucky, this is erasure, and I will not stand for it.
Oh, no.
Where is my boy?
During the war, Cap was fighting his deadliest foe, the monstrous Red Skull, because, Hitler was just some nobody.
Right.
Yep.
Well, this is one of the many iterations of Jameson where he's wearing a Hitler mustache.
That's true.
Exactly. And this was the 80s, so Jameson was just a boy during World War II.
Right.
And he grew up thinking, nah, this mustache is fine.
It seems a bit at odds with his Captain America fandom, but whatever.
Everybody knows my mustache is clearly a tribute to Charlie Chaplin.
Of course.
He wants Cap to step on him, and he thinks the best way for that to happen is to...
And also, did anyone else notice that when the film was done, Jameson does the Pelosi clap? He puts his fucking wrists together and claps like a seal.
When Red Skull is describing his plan to his wormy assistant, Dr. Neiman, Red Skull is playing with a Captain America action figure like he's fucking Dark Helmet.
Yep. I express ordered this. I was going to say from eBay, but that wasn't a thing yet.
It's like ceramic, because he breaks the head off, and
Yeah.
I was really hoping that when it panned to the floor, there'd be like a pile of them.
Yeah.
All headless.
A little to the left, Kronk.
Oh no, Captain America has been crushed.
But nope, it's just the one on the floor with a really strange perspective shot that it was hard to wrap my head around.
Giant head.
This show is full of strange perspective shots.
Make sure that you're not being taken over by the Red Skull's disguise gas.
Oh, God.
The gas that makes him look like Jonah Jameson.
If he can do that, why does he need to switch brains with Captain America if he could just...
That's what I was thinking! Catch up the listener, yeah, so the whole plot is that the Red Skull kidnaps Cap. In the process of that, he disguises himself as J. Jonah Jameson. How? It's not clear, but there's gas. And then he turns back into Red Skull. There's gas involved.
There's gas involved.
The action thing between the Red Skull and Captain America when they were on stage was one of the most awkward things ever, because they were standing there for I don't know how long, just like, oh my god, the Red Skull's behind me, I'd better stand here. I too will stand here. I will speak threats. Such standing and threat speaking do we do.
Yeah, there was just a huge pause when Red Skull showed up where Captain America has time to turn to the audience and says, everyone, get to safety. Don't worry, I will take care of Red Skull here, so you all go off while I, in just a moment, take care of Red Skull.
I agree, everybody. Get out of here. Fires warning shots at the ground.
He's got his back to Red Skull.
Yeah.
Red Skull could fucking take that opportunity to attack him.
Well, supervillains respect pausing for a monologue. When Spidey shows up to try to help Cap, his line is, now's my chance to show that Spidey's no piker when it comes to heroics.
Piker? Is that the word?
1981 dialogue. I guess that was a word back then.
I can attest that it was not.
This is when the 80s was still really just the 70s, I feel like.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy that Spidey's entire motivation for getting involved in this episode at all was petty jealousy.
Piker prevention.
So we mentioned Ted Schwartz, the voice of Spider-Man in this series. His other big claim to fame was that he was the voice of Thrasher on G.I. Joe in the 80s.
All right.
Which I think was also Marvel animation.
It looked very similar. A lot of stuff in the early 80s looked a lot like that. It reminded me a lot of G.I. Joe, Mask, and all those things that were very similar style.
Some of the designs, especially Peter and Betty Brant, there was sort of a retro anime aesthetic to them.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, the animation was produced by Toei, so...
That makes a lot of sense.
The same people who were making anime were also making this.
I wasn't sure if 80s shows were already being outsourced.
According to the IMDb trivia for this episode, this was the first episode animated by Toei.
Okay.
The first of many they would do for Marvel Productions. I tried to do an IMDb trivia deep dive, as I always do. There were only 2 trivia points for the show as a whole, one of which was saying that Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends ran concurrently.
Right.
The other trivia point, which 0 out of 5 people found interesting, the web-slinging superhero battles crime in New York City.
Oh my god.
Wow.
Changes everything.
Does Spidey even battle crime in this episode? He's just an accessory to one, unintentionally.
He throws some robots around, sort of.
He helps a man who looks like a big red ape.
Oh my god.
He looked like a fucking bulldog.
Yeah.
And while we're on the subject of design, we gotta talk about Red Skull's dick ship.
I didn't even notice that.
Red Skull's plane is shaped like a dick.
Very much
Watch
so.
it again. That is a fucking big red dick that got past the censors, apparently.
On the dick ship. I'm scrubbing the episode. I'm looking for that dick ship.
Once you see it, you can't unsee it. I guarantee you.
I found the dick ship. I imagine this is actually what the Shape of Water guy is working with.
Yes, absolutely.
Based on how this thing is shaped. Like, once it opens up.
Spidey calls Red Skull's ship a skull ship. Fuck you, that's a dick ship. Don't call it what it ain't. You know it.
He watches Skull land the ship. He's like, who's the penis Parker now?
So the papers start publishing stories of how Spider-Man let Cap get kidnapped. Everyone's blaming Spider-Man for some reason. And the ship is still circling the Statue of Liberty.
Yep.
It doesn't even escape New York.
The papers are printing it. There's a newsboy going extra, extra, who looks like fucking Opie, but sounds like a 50-year-old man.
Extra, read all about it, G. Willikers.
How is that in any way Spider-Man's fault?
Yeah.
Cap hits Spider-Man with the shield.
I know the idea is that, Spider-Man somehow accidentally just has bad timing and hijinks ensue, but I don't know what Cap's maneuver was that Spider-Man somehow accidentally foiled.
The shield fucking boomeranged.
What was the shield going to have done if Spider-Man wasn't there? That's what's not clear.
Would have saved America, obviously.
Earlier, when Jameson was given the speech, he referred to this age of newly awakened patriotism, which I feel like might have been an attempt at a subtle slam against Reaganism, because this would have been right around the time Reagan was elected, and the patriotism turns into blind hatred against Spider-Man, because they scapegoat him for Captain America's kidnapping, and due to circumstance, it looks like he's torn up the flag.
Yeah, he desecrates a gosh dang flag while fleeing the mob.
This is commentary on how dangerous blind patriotism can be. The mob basically Dixie Chicks Spider-Man, and
We're embarrassed Captain America is from New York.
and Spidey even says, I'd like to stick around and recite the Pledge of Allegiance or something, but I have a hunch you wouldn't listen.
My shallow displays of patriotism aren't gonna work here, I guess.
I mean, this predicted post 9/11 hysteria. It's like that Futurama episode where fucking Zoidberg eats the Earth flag and everyone turns against him.
I was doing freedom of speech, Earth's most sacred right.
Your Honor, freedom of speech applies to what comes out of a mouth, not what goes in.
Even Betty Brant turns against Spider-Man.
I thought Jameson was just full of hot air, but now I think he was right.
Again, how was it Spidey's fault that he got hit with Cap's shield? What the fuck?
What were they doing? They were all hiding, and then they all came out of hiding to say, hey, this is your fault.
They're just looking for someone to blame.
Hey, you're nearby. You.
J. Jonah Jameson shows up on TV and calls Spider-Man, among other things, a sellout.
He's also a cowardly turncoat, a sellout, and the worst traitor since Benedict Arnold.
Yeah, I like Spider-Man better before he signed with a major label, too.
Yep.
I liked him better when he was on Sub Pop. I have to wonder how much of the angry mob stuff in this episode was a preview of Spider-Man No Way Home. Because Far From Home ended with fucking Jameson showing up on that huge TV and showing the clip of Mysterio.
Spider-Man's name is Peter Parker.
What the? That's how the third Spidey movie's gonna go, is angry mobs hating on Peter Parker.
Cut to Flash Thompson. I used to think Jameson was full of it, but no, I think he was right.
I have to assume this is one of those shows where they just never changed the end credits, because there were approximately 500 voice actors listed, even though every crowd scene we just heard the same 4 people over and over.
Right.
Yeah.
So in universe, Spider-Man apparently allows a comic book to be published about his own exploits.
By Marvel.
Published by Marvel.
And of course, the kid throws him away after Spider-Man gets canceled.
And that kid? Miles Morales.
Of course, Miles Morales.
Anybody can wear the mask.
If this episode was made today, it couldn't be done without a post-credits sequence showing the kid going through the dumpsters looking for his comics.
He's digging through the trash and a spider bites him. Ow!
There you go.
I mean, I guess it fits that Spider-Man's been canceled, because so was this show.
Ayo.
Hey.
For the era of animation where everything was $12 per episode.
Yeah.
Of all the tiny little things, the part of the episode where Spidey is disguised as Cap, the fact that they made a point to have a separate model, they could have just redrawn the same design they had for Cap. Instead, they had a separate one. Oh, because the costume doesn't fit Peter very well.
They changed it slightly.
Just a little baggy, and his eyes are different.
And of course, he gets the Cap suit from Stan's costume shop, referencing Stan Lee.
Oh, right.
Maybe that's where Spider-Verse got it.
That's what I was wondering.
Can I return it if it doesn't fit?
It always fits. Eventually.
I would not put it past the producers of Spider-Verse to decide to reference just this one episode with their Stan Lee cameo.
And the display window at Stan's costume shop has costumes of Iron Man, Vision, Cap, of course, Luke Cage.
I think he might have been Power Man at the time still.
Jean Grey, Thor, Storm.
He should have disguised himself as Storm. I'd have been down for that.
I had the same thought, yeah.
And one other character I didn't recognize, because I don't think there's been a movie made of this character. I couldn't even tell what gender it was supposed to be, but the character's dressed head to toe in what looks like this black bird suit with wings. If anyone out there can identify who that character is, please tweet at us. So anyway, Peter disguises himself as Captain America, and then he somehow finds an airplane pilot who thinks he's really Cap.
Oh my god.
He hasn't been following the news?
That's his whole plan.
The pilot doesn't read the papers, apparently. The pilot doesn't know Cap's been kidnapped.
He had that conversation with Robbie Robertson where he's like, what am I going to do? What's Spider-Man going to do? Well, I'm sure he'll think of something. And that clicked in his brain. He's like, something, that's it.
I have to think of something.
That's what I was missing. Something.
Right. I'm going to dress up like Captain America. I'm going to find a pilot who hasn't watched the news. I've got this.
Also, even though it was right after the Stan's costume shop scene, if this was live action, that pilot would have been the Stan cameo.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And when they find Red Skull's castle, Spidey follows the example of Captain America in Winter Soldier and jumps out of a plane with no parachute.
Yep.
But he makes a web parachute, which is more holes than substance. So how does it work?
Yeah, that shouldn't work.
If it were more accurate in spider form, the web parachute would have come out of his butt, and he would have just kind of floated on the breeze like Charlotte's babies.
By the way, where is Red Skull's castle anyway?
By the power of Red Skull.
Did Spider-Man literally just have that pilot fly around the world until his fucking tracker started beeping?
Germany, I'm guessing.
Probably Germany, yeah. So did he fly all the way across the Atlantic with that guy?
Oh, it's in the castle of Tunder Ten Trump. Good thing I read Candide. It's for the English majors.
All Spidey knew is that the Skull probably bought this place from Dracula. Or some werewolf.
Or a werewolf, because werewolves have castles. Sure.
See, this was before Peter Parker hired Bruce Valanche to punch up his quips.
So Red Skull's evil plan involves this brain-switching machine, which they demonstrate by switching a dog and cat's brains, where the dog's snarling at the cat, and then they switch brains, and then the cat starts snarling at the dog who's cowering. First of all, if the cat is inside a dog's brain, why would the cat cower at a fellow cat? A fellow cat that is smaller than him, in fact. And Red Skull announces his plans, like a fucking Bond villain, basically, to put his brain inside Cap's body and fool everyone into thinking he's Cap. So this is what happened to the Republican Party, basically. Their patriotic symbols got corrupted by fascistic brainworms.
Lol.
It's kind of a perfect metaphor for it, really.
There's also a very terrifying close-up of Red Skull laughing that will haunt me to the end of my days.
Oh, God.
Oh, yeah, because he looks like Hanna-Barbera King Kong, I swear.
He looks like evil Magilla Gorilla.
That's what it is.
So few parts of the screen weren't his mouth.
What's so weird is, like, I kept thinking he was Tony J, even though we established before this that he's Peter Cullen.
It did have a bit of a Tony J vibe to it.
While the mind of the Red Skull inhabits the powerful body of everyone's favorite hero, Captain America.
You see, Captain, I'm going to send this baby back to hell.
So Spidey fights off some robot goons, one of which he tries throwing the shield that he bought at a costume shop at, as if that would do anything.
What would Captain America do? Oh, yeah.
I knew it! The only way for that heavily armored knight to have been so heavy was if he was a robot.
Sure, why not?
And at one point, he has a line where he says to one of the other robots, "Tisk tisk, Lego Playmate, what would Smokey the Bear say?"
Lego Playmate? What? Are they just throwing words together?
Lego Playmate.
Now, first off, that is 2 pop culture references in a single line.
Right.
Now, a while ago, Tony and I were on another podcast, the Podcast Without a Cool Acronym, talking to Swampy Marsh, co-creator of Phineas and Ferb and Milo Murphy's Law.
Here, Dave, let me pick up that name for you. I think you dropped it.
Heyo.
You were there too.
Yeah, I know.
Swampy talked about how much red tape they have to go through anytime they were referencing anything in the real world in a children's cartoon today, like referencing any brand. So that's 2 brand name drops in a single line.
Yeah.
If you count Smokey as a brand name. I guess this was before there was such a thing as network oversight.
He also calls that same robot with the pointy flamethrower Iron Man.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing really predicts the MCU tradition of calling characters other things that aren't that character.
It means get lost, Squidward.
His Cap costume gets torn, and you see the Spider-Man costume underneath.
Oh, he got burned. Yeah.
And he says, "One more year when I don't make the best dressed list. Swaggity, swaggity now." And then they try to lampshade the fucking Skull couldn't be using the old secret passage behind the bookcase gag, could he? You are in no fucking position to mock unoriginality, 1981 Spider-Man series. Don't even...
Cut him off at the pass.
Was that supposed to be their slam on the 66 Batman series?
Maybe, I don't know.
Well, it took them 15 years to come up with it.
They're a little slow.
That was the moment the writers felt shame. All the rest of it, they didn't care, but when it got to the secret passage behind the bookcase, they were like, ugh, we gotta say something about fuck this shit.
Part of the quipping functionally is just to lampshade stuff. Like, again, in Civil War, that shield does not obey the laws of physics.
Yeah, exactly.
Which it does not.
I guess the writers had it in their head that Spider-Man had to be a quipster, but they didn't know how to write good quips, so they have him saying shit like, "We can still get home to watch the Late Late Show with James Corden." I wouldn't wish that upon my worst enemy.
Because you don't have to do lip sync when Spider-Man's mask is on. I wonder if they just got the voice actor in to just say shit.
They might have, yeah.
And that's how Spider-Man's quips were written.
Maybe.
I feel like they do that in general a lot on Spider-Man projects, because they can.
I presume this is true of every episode, but there were a couple of scene transitions. This sort of web transition that looks like a cross between the Batman 66 bat signal transition and the Super Friends beam of light transition.
Right.
So, yeah, no originality in this particular iteration of
Nope,
Spider-Man.
none whatsoever.
I know, like, again, budget is $12 whole, so
Right.
you're just kind of drawing as fast as you can, but Cap is wearing a cowl. That's an excuse not to draw all the details on his ears every time he's on screen, and yet they did.
Yeah.
That thing is perfectly molded to the contours.
And they gave him the giant ass A. That doesn't stand for France.
The giant ass A.
I will say this, not that it was great animation, but surprisingly little recycled animation. Granted, across the whole series, they'll probably repurpose the same shots of Peter web swinging through the city.
Anytime they have a laughing shot of any sort, I hope they use that Red Skull shot.
I hope so, yeah.
His name is Victor Von Doom, inexplicably cuts to Red Skull. His name is the Kingpin.
Her name is Aunt May.
And apparently Spider-Man can just pull Cap's metal restraints off.
That was a weird moment, because he pulled it off, and Captain America just sits there.
Yeah.
Doesn't do anything for, like, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes. So are they saying that his brain is also gone somehow? But no, he just gets up and does stuff.
It's Germany. Sometimes you collapse into a chair, and then a guy in a weird outfit comes up to you, and you just kind of go with it.
Yeah.
Look, I know these restraints are stronger than super soldier serum, but they're not stronger than spider strength.
Well, actually, if you compare these feats from issue 716
We haven't talked much about the Red Skull's wormy assistant in this episode, Dr. Neiman, or as I call him, Diet Zola.
He had, like, the worst change of heart I think I've ever seen in anything. Well, I meant for this to be used for good. That was just kind of thrown in there. I've been working for a Nazi for the rest of the show, but this was meant to be used for good.
The Einstein analog, I guess. Instead of Zola, he's kind of closer to Erskine, but...
Pretty much, yeah.
If they really wanted to run with it, it would have had Neiman begging the president not to use his brain switcher machine on Japan.
Oh, God.
Too soon?
It was straight up Danger Death Ray on MST3K, where it's like, we invented this death ray for peaceful purposes. How is the brain switcher going to help mankind?
Should we get into how they defeat the Red Skull ultimately?
The existential horror of it.
They put him in the chair, and there's no one in the other chair, so they turn it on, and with no body to collect the Red Skull's brain, his brain just evaporates.
There's nothing we can do, Cap. His brain is gone into the ether. That's how science works.
With creepy skulls screaming into the sky.
So they kill him.
Yeah.
I mean, how is that functionally any different than just killing him? With no body to receive Red Skull's mind, it just vanished into the air as a harmless disembodied spirit, so you made him a ghost and a corpse. How is that different from killing him? You just straight up murdered a man.
Also, keep in mind, like, Red Skull's only goal is just to take Cap.
Right.
There are civilians present, and he doesn't take anyone hostage or anything. He's just like, now let me fire a few warning shots to disperse the crowd, because you're the only person I'm here for. He's doing the Goku move, like Goku does that.
This was the era of Saturday morning TV when they had, like, parents groups and shit, so you couldn't get too violent.
For sure.
You couldn't actually beat up a person. That's why when Spidey's fighting off Red Skull's goons, they're just robots.
Right.
But apparently you can have this existentially terrifying death of Red Skull himself.
That won't traumatize any kids.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Was operating on the same principle in the mid-2000s. Bullying people is wrong. Now I'm gonna banish your mind to the Shadow Realm.
Here's how it's different from just killing him. If they had gotten to season 2, somebody would have been able to invent a device that reunited his brain with his body.
They would have done a vision or something to him.
Yeah.
It's not even because he's evil, it's because he was mean to the scientists.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
You never should have called me ugly. I have feelings.
So if Red Skull had just been nicer, he'd still be alive.
This is exactly the plot of an episode of Teen Titans, by the way, but instead of Red Skull, it's a robot named Atlas, who's voiced by Keith David, who thinks that he's better than Cyborg, because Cyborg is only half robot.
If the Nazis were only polite to us, we'd be fine with their genocide. I don't see why they have to be such meanies.
I know you say that as a joke, but how many times have you actually heard that from, like, YouTube shitlords?
Yeah, exactly.
I wrote down Dr. Neiman's actual line because it stuck with me. It was just so powerful. You should not have called me ugly, and all those other names.
I love the alternate cut of Winter Soldier where the Zola AI is like, you see, Captain, if Herr Schmidt had not called me ugly, I would not have defected to the United States.
And then they go back home and Spider-Man's welcomed as a hero. He's a pariah no more.
In fact, I may just suggest to a certain newspaper publisher a Spider-Man day.
Spider-Man does not need one more day. We already established that.
I'm thinking too, like, hey, I could finally get this prick off your back. I don't want to shake hands with that guy.
Because he's got cooties or something. You're wearing gloves!
At this point, the hatred is mutual. Also, when Spidey's on that parade float and it cuts to the close-up of him, and the red on his suit is the same as the red on the flag backdrop.
Yep.
There's no contrast in the shot, so it's just an overwhelming, unappealing, bright redness taking up the whole screen.
May as well be a Red Skull.
Well, yeah, back in the days of 16-bit graphics, you know?
I mean, earlier in the episode, Jameson said, Spider-Man's probably in league with that Red Skull, that Red Menace, or whatever he said. So is J. Jonah Jameson McCarthy?
He's both McCarthy and Hitler in the wackiest mix-up in politics.
When two men go into a weird machine in an obscure German castle.
Anyway, I do believe the time has come to answer the question that has baffled mankind and Spider-Mankind through the ages, namely, what's the attraction? Obviously, Universal's Islands of Adventure has had the Spider-Man ride ever since 1999. Disney California Adventure is opening Avengers Campus on June 4th. The big e-ticket opening there will be Web Slingers, a Spider-Man adventure. But, of course, this specific episode, where Captain America gets captured, will be the most watched title on Disney Plus pretty soon, because everyone's going to want to laugh at it or something. How is Disney specifically going to work this episode into the parks? Dave.
Disney's not going to work it into the parks. Legoland is. Because there was a Lego Playmate that you're going to get to beat up with your tiny little Lego Spider-Man.
Because Spider-Man isn't in enough theme parks owned by different companies.
Exactly. Look, Legoland has a little Star Wars mini-land, right. So I think everything is on the table for Legoland. If Lego has made a toy of it, they can not necessarily give it a ride, but give it some sort of representation in the parks.
Garrett.
It's going to be a simulator ride, because everything's a simulator ride now.
Sure.
The whole shtick is like, oh, welcome to this new experimental Stark Tech technology where we copy the consciousness of your favorite member of the Avengers, and they take you on a fun ride around the city or something. Oh, but then Red Skull gets in and he puts his brain in the machine instead.
Tim.
I'm thinking it's a dark ride, and really the only thing that happens is that Jameson, with his arms tied behind his back and his legs bound, just jumps out of the bushes at you, going, "Ah, you weaselly wall crawler!" Again and again.
Well, unfortunately, you're all wrong. I think it's obvious the ride that needs to be made based on this episode. A Dumbo-esque spinner with Red Skull's dick ship. Just let all the kids ride on Red Skull's dick ship, and that's what you call it.
Still won't look uglier than Astro Orbiter.
And then something happens that's bad that isn't your fault, and the whole park cancels you. And that's the ride. So, final verdict, folks, is Spider-Man, the 1981 TV series, episode 18, The Capture of Captain America, a Disney Plus or a Disney minus? Tim?
Gonna go with a minus on this one. Strangely not a huge fan.
Garrett, Disney Plus or Disney minus?
You know, I wouldn't recommend this to anybody unless you're doing a drinking game, but if I imagine being a kid in the 80s where none of the cartoons were good, but hey, Captain America shows up in this one, that's gotta be pretty cool. I'll give it a Disney Plus.
Dave?
See, I have a deep love for terrible old TV animation of late Hanna-Barbera and Filmation and all that. So there were some cheesy moments I really enjoyed, but overall I just found this episode boring. So I'm giving it a Disney minus.
You know, I'm honestly a little torn on this. This was dumb as dog shit, but I did kind of enjoy myself watching it, just laughing at how dumb it was. I guess, ultimately, yeah, a Disney minus, because it was bad, but I don't know if it was quite bonkers enough for me to really recommend it as a so bonkers it's great kind of thing. So, yeah, ultimately, this gets a Disney minus, but hey, made for a fun viewing experience on this snarky podcast of ours, I guess. So who's got stuff to plug?
Worm Quartet, the Pac-Man EP, does currently exist. You go to wormquartet.com, you can find it and listen to it and purchase items if you like items.
Tony mentioned at the start of this that I've written way too many Pokemon songs, and I've got more on the way because I'm trying to write my way through the whole damn Pokedex. So if you're interested in any of that, the series is called Rock That Pokemon. It's on YouTube. Latest song is a ska song about Magikarp, because I've heard of a real big fish, but this is ridiculous.
So I recently recorded a riff of a primitively animated superhero short that I actually have much more fondness for, the original Fleischer Studios Superman cartoon, on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Doggins.
And as always, you can follow me on Twitter at Tony Goldmark, and you can also follow this show on Twitter at EFVD Podcast. I've also got a Facebook fan group you can join called Some Jerk with a Fan Club, and I've got a YouTube channel, youtube.com/Tony Goldmark, where you can find all 3 seasons of my web series, Some Jerk with a Camera, along with a bunch of other videos about movies and theme parks, and even a few scant episodes of this very podcast. You can find every episode of this podcast at pipedreampodcast.com, as well as all the usual outlets like Spotify, Audible, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play. If you like what you've been hearing and you'd like to help us out, please subscribe, please leave a review, please give us 5 stars. All that stuff helps us get discovered by the almighty algorithm. If you'd like to help us out even more, you can donate to my Patreon, patreon.com/Tony Goldmark, where if you pledge any amount, even the bare minimum of $1 a month, you get to hear episodes of this podcast 1 day early on Tuesdays instead of Wednesdays. Special thanks to all my patrons. You don't know how much it means to me, especially in these financially uncertain times. Once again, that's patreon.com/Tony Goldmark. Dave, you still have a guest choice option in your back pocket. Would you like to come back on the show next week and use it, or keep it in aforementioned back pocket?
I think for now I'm going to keep it in my back pocket.
He's keeping it in his back pocket, so to read off the randomizer's pick for next week, I am now joined by a very special guest on next week's show. We had him on the show for Muppet Month, and we're having him back again next week. Defunctland's Kevin Perjurer. How you doing, Kevin?
I'm a little scared, but I am ready.
Okay, Smart House, initiate random shuffle mode, please.
Initiating random shuffle mode.
Make a selection.
And the winner is
Pixar miscellaneous movie tie-in shorts of the 2010s and beyond, 2012 to 2021. My favorite movie.
Okay, watching a bunch of Pixar shorts. Awesome. Join us next week on Escape from Walt Disney as we cover a bunch of miscellaneous Pixar movie tie-in shorts of the 2010s and beyond.
Come on home where your video's playing. Good times are waiting, it's true. Come where your family is waiting for Walt Disney and you. Walt Disney and you. Walt Disney and you.
You got hard, kid. Where you from?
Queens?
Brooklyn.
I'm going to show you something that's better than this.
Okay.
Visual aspects are great in a podcast.
Okay, I have in my hand two better representations. This will be for the video, I guess, of Spider-Man. This is a Spider-Man toy gun.
Spider-Man is like is straddling the gun.
Is straddling a laser gun, which screams
like you do.
Is Spider-Man presenting?
Which end of him is facing the barrel of the gun is what I want to know. I can't quite see through the plastic.
Okay, there you are. The plastic isn't really...
Okay.
So,
This is an audio-only podcast, so I guess that's just a joke for us. But
yeah,
okay.
This does have some seriously charged like pinup energy. Like, imagine if Spider-Man was a tiny nurse on a big syringe, which is also that's actually a Yu-Gi-Oh card.
Spider-Person was the other one I was going to mention.
Spider-Person. Spider-Fella.
With Tomb Raider.
With Tomb Raider for no reason, yes.
I own, somewhere my family owns a bootleg copy of Spider-Man that someone bought in China of the first Sam Raimi movie. And for the description on the back of the DVD, they copy and pasted, what they found when they searched Spider-Man plot description. And it's the plot description of an X-Files episode about some spider creature.
Nice. Spider-Man's master plan, build his own little spider clan. In the woods, now they're troops, fighting for special interest groups. Look out, wherever there's a banger.